Welcome to Chai Pe Kharcha, where we have conversations on personal finance among four NRI professionals working at tech firms. Think of these like water cooler chats you have at the office. Only this time, you will have Ishan, Madhvesh, Rohit, and Siddharth as colleagues you will be listening into. Before we get started, a quick disclaimer. We are not financial experts. The content provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Always consult with a qualified financial professional if you need financial advice. Okay, welcome everyone to the new episode of Chai Pe Kharcha. In this episode, we'll be discussing on a very interesting topic of year-end financial planning and general planning for the upcoming year. So this week, we have all four of us, which has been a rarity in recent weeks. So me, Siddharth, Madhvesh, Rohit, and Ishan are in today. Okay, let's kick it off. What I'll do is I'll start with a very blanket question and then start poking through the answers. Right. So the blanket question is, and try to answer this in 3 to 4 lines so that we can go deeper with follow up. Question 1: do you do year-end financial planning? Yes or no? If yes, so what are the 3 things within the review that you look at for the whole year? Let's start with these two and then we follow. Who'll go first? Rohit, you want to start?
Sure. So, answer to first question, yes, I do year-end reviews where I look at my entire like year's performance in terms of investment, savings, expenditures, etc. And then I use that information to form a plan for 2024. Broadly, there are 3 things that I look at. One is how much money I earn. Second is how much did I save from that earnings. And third is how did my investments go? Basically, like what kind of returns did I get? And then what do I need to kind of change from it?
That's a Sky follow-up this time, which is a good one. So you said you look at 3 things. How much did you earn? How much did you save? And the investments that you made within the year or maybe years prior,
Mhm.
what percentage did you get in terms of it? So once you get the numbers, what exactly do you give me example of the action do you take for the next year so that has this changes in some way
Yeah,
or maybe remains the same?
absolutely. So income as a salaried person, obviously there's very limited that I can do about the income, right? Unless I'm doing a side hustle such as this podcast, which might maybe start earning money at some point. There's not much.
Million followers.
Yes. Please follow us so we can start earning money. The idea of tracking your income is to basically get to point number 2 is how much did you actually save, right? Like you can't save in isolation. You need income number and you need expense number, and then you can come to your savings number. So generally the way that I try to operate is I have a very broad budget where I say that I want to try and save at least 50% of my income every single month, which obviously translates into hopefully slightly more than 50% because there are some bonuses and there are some like stocks or like whatever extra. So that is one. The second thing which is connected to this is I try to make sure that I have maximized all the corporate benefits. So anything that I can get reimbursed, anything that is like an additional facility that I have not used, I try to do that by the end of the month because obviously otherwise it will lapse and I will lose that benefit. So in my income expense saving calculation, I factor that in. And if there is something that I have missed, which I can't do anything about now, so next year, I'll take action on that. The other piece from an income expense saving perspective will be, are there areas where I have spent a lot more than what I thought I'm spending? So, for example, I love eating out, right? So I go to a lot of restaurants, and generally my spending on restaurants is my biggest expense outside of rent. So obviously that needs to be within reason. So as an example, I would like to see how much food I ordered through online delivery services, or how much I went out to eat, and from a monetary or like a dollar perspective, how much was that value? Am I comfortable with that number? Then no action needed. If that number makes me a little bit like, yeah, this is too much, probably I should cut down, then I'll do that also.
सर तो इस पे एक और,
Hmm.
तो आपने खाने का एग्जांपल दिया in terms of you have spent X amount in 2023, you will spend X minus 3, maybe if X is high, right? Question is, do you track, how do you, from January to December of 2023, where do you keep track of food expenses as an example? आप कहाँ से निकालोगे? आप वही, like we had discussed in the past episodes, put it in a Google sheet, yeah, in some app? Where do you track something like this?
I have tried to use some apps, but the integration is not always consistent. Like, I've not been very happy with the apps that are available in terms of their ability to automatically classify my expenses in the right bucket. So, what ends up happening is I'll download an app, I'll connect it with my bank account, with my credit card, and then it'll download my statement and then misclassify everything. So, I have to do a lot of manual work in trying to organize it. So I've mostly stopped doing that. I use an Excel sheet. So every month, couple of months, I'll take out I try to spend everything that I do on credit cards, except for places where they don't accept credit cards, so that I can get points or rewards or something like that. So I will download that statement, and then I'll broadly classify what are the line items and what expense category that falls in. Generally speaking, there are 2, 3 expense categories for me. One will be food, so either a restaurant or something that I ordered online to be delivered. Second will be cabs, and third will be just random like groceries and all. And fourth will be some additional shopping, which is not utility shopping, which is like clothes or shoes or something like that. So these are generally the four big categories that I get. And then every maybe 3 or 4 months, there will be a travel expense that will happen, which will be like flight tickets, hotels, everything associated with. But that I do completely separately. I don't make it as part of my everyday life expenses.
Just to add a point here, आजकल credit card लोग भी they become advanced की they automatically categorize their expenses based on the merchant and they send out a report every month. So that will not be very accurate, but kind of a proxy of tracking.
Directional measure.
Yes. I think it's important to
ठीक है.
not go overboard in terms of being like super detail oriented to the last penny. You need a broad picture of what's going on. You don't need to be, unless you are an accountant, then it's fine. But you don't need to be an accountant and kind of tally everything very neatly.
How do you do it? I start with the 2 questions. Do you do year-end review? Yes, no. If yes, what are the top 3 things you look at in the review?
Definitely, I do year-end reviews. 3 चीजें अगर I have to rank, the first thing is like savings. कि ईयर स्टार्ट में मैं जो टारगेट सेट किया था कि मुझे इतना सेव करना है एंड ये सब बकेट्स में सेव करना है, इन्वेस्ट करना है, डिड आई गेट दैट? सेकंड थिंग इज लाइक जो मैंने बजट किया है उससे am I close to that or like I have gone overboard? And I also define somewhere around like if I'm 10 to 15% overboard, I feel it's still fine because like you cannot be always within the budget. But if it's more than that, then probably I try to reevaluate or what has happened to my budget buckets. Third thing I have to say, then I also try to like look for resources and tools to improve my tracking. If there is a new app or something like that, I try to use this time or like even improve my spreadsheet, which I primarily use for tracking all my income and expenses. So these are 3 things I generally do during the year end.
In general, but it's clear on you. App answer on this. Since how long have you been doing these year-end reviews? How many years?
I think probably 3 to 4 years now. जैसे ही मैंने
Okay.
इन्वेस्टमेंट्स चालू किया,
And how much time do you take for a review? I'm assuming you do it some time in December.
so
How much does one review take?
I would say I spend a bit more than average in comparison to others in terms of tracking. It's just because I'm more passionate about it. It should take somewhere between 3 to 4 hours just for this particular review. And I also spend quite considerable amount of time every month and sometimes during the quarter end as well. To
So, so you do light reviews every month, slightly heavier reviews every quarter, and heaviest review in December. And you've been doing it for last 4 years. Question from a layman perspective, from my perspective, is in the 4 years that you have been doing this, have you experienced any differential in terms of better savings, better tracking? Actually, better tracking is because you look at it, better savings, better tracking, and in general, better financial decisions
I would
because of doing this. Not in general your research, because of doing this exercise.
definitely, because like जो मंथली और क्वार्टरली मैंने बोला, लाइक इट्स वेरी हैपसट, ऐसा नहीं है कि मुझे ये सब करना है। सडनली मैं एक जगह पे देखता हूँ ठीक नहीं लग रहा है, इसको ठीक करूंगा, वही क्वार्टरली और मंथ एंड में, ईयर एंड में ही लाइक आई टेक डेडिकेटेड टाइम टू इट, ट्राई टू अंडरस्टैंड मेरा पैटर्न्स कैसा था। इवन दो वी हैव ये 10 तरीके में ही हमको इन्वेस्ट करना है, वी स्टार्ट विद दैट, but as humans are, we try to deviate. Suddenly, we see a bull market, we want to invest more. So we would have done that. We might have not tracked what was the return from that particular investment phase. तो ये सब करने को मिलता है सिर्फ हमारे ईयर एंड के रिव्यू पे। सो ऐसा कभी कभी ज़्यादा इंसाइट्स भी मिलता है कि स्पेंड पैटर्न्स भी बोला था कि विच क्रेडिट कार्ड एम आई यूजिंग टू पे फॉर द राइट एक्सपेंस एक्सेट्रा। फॉर एग्जाम्पल मैं ये साल जब कर रहा था चल I was able to identify that I have a particular credit card for booking my flight tickets, which has higher reward points. But I noticed that I done a couple of flight tickets from a different credit card, which makes me lose out on the reward points, which is quite considerable. So ये सब जानने को मिलता है year end reviews में. So this is on the expense part, but also on the investment part, कि मैं target रखता हूँ कि commodities में इतना डालना है and साल भर मैं लेते रहूँगा समझो गोल्ड, बट ईयर एंड में ही मुझे पता चलेगा कि मैंने टारगेट किया कि नहीं, नहीं हिट किया तो कितना है। सो ये सब तो काफ़ी जानने को मिलता है।
Anal question. So can you give a number in terms of percentage कि last 4 year में आपने ये reviews किए हैं? By approximately how much percentage improvement would you have seen in your finances?
सर A/B टेस्टिंग तो नहीं कर पाऊंगा इससे, बट ट्रैकिंग एफिशिएंसी तो डेफिनेटली इम्प्रूव है। आई डोंट नो कि हाउ मच आई कैन एट्रीब्यूट दैट टू ओनली बिकॉज ऑफ ट्रैकिंग, but some of the insights that I have discovered has made me more organized. I think that's a good way. It has made me a more organized person in terms of investment. And as years goes by, I have become more a disciplined person in terms of investing. कि पहले रहता था कि अभी मेरे पास 1 लाख है, मैं जाके स्टॉक्स खरीद लूंगा, बट अभी मेरे पास 1 लाख है तो मुझे पता है 20% मुझे गोल्ड में खरीदना है, सो दैट ईयर एंड मेरा टारगेट था कि समझो 200 ग्राम का गोल्ड खरीदना था। तो सो इट हैज गॉटन मी फ्रॉम अ वेरी haphazard place to a better place.
Yeah, this makes Ishan. Again, same 2 questions. Yes, no, and what are the top 3 things you do?
There is definitely an year-end review, as in most things in life. So for me also, similar to what Madhvesh was saying, I actually do a review of expenses every, like the plan is to do it every month, but it ends up happening every 2-3 months. So it takes me about an hour and a half to get all my credit card expenses effectively, because that's what I use as my primary mode of spending. So getting all my statements together and then seeing where I have spent money. And this has been going on for now about 7-8 years. Since I moved to Singapore, effectively I've been doing this. Because जब इंडिया में थे, it was you always had the backing कि और कुछ नहीं होगा तो घर चले जाएंगे और पापा से पैसे मिल जाएंगे अगर अगर certainly you lose out, but once you move out, that money doesn't seem like you'll be able to get money from home कि यहाँ पे खर्चा चलाना है. So that kind of triggered the tracking to make sure that I was saving enough and not spending everything. So the three main things that I do is, like I said, मेरे credit card expenses in the year-end review, I'll effectively add up the entire sheet for the year to see what kind of expenses I did, what are the categories of expenses I did. The second thing I'm going to do is check my balances because I have different accounts for different purposes, just to make sure that I haven't overspent or overdrawn from any of the accounts. जो बीच में हुआ था, since you asked examples of making changes, I realized that market down जा रही थी and my investments were looking a little too red, so I was trying to a dollar cost average. And to do that, because monthly income to fixed it, I had to draw into some of my savings accounts कि वहाँ से निकाल के अभी let's average down right now, which led to my savings balances going down compared to the target I had kept. Because of that, I then put money back in and I stopped putting money into investments because already डाल चुका हूँ more than the target that I had for investments. So basically rebalancing money in the next couple of months after that. And the third thing that I'll do is I'll make sure that I have budgets for whatever expenses that I know are coming for next year, which includes effectively insurance premiums, taxes, जिसके लिए अलग से पैसे रखने पड़ते हैं, and then kind of calculating what that is going to look like, because by December you know what the income is that you've gotten. Then at least in Singapore we follow the calendar year, so you can plan for some of these things for next year and make sure that अगर अभी तक नहीं किया है save, मेरा normally taxes के लिए होता है कि I haven't saved enough, then I will start putting some more money separately for that.
Got it. Got it. This is quite interesting. Again, question that can be applicable to all three of you, but as Ishan is speaking all, let's get with it and go with your answer. Is you mentioned that you also like Madhvesh do monthly and it turns into quarterly reviews, and then you do a year-end review. What's apart from the tax piece, which I can understand, the end of the year it becomes easy to calculate. Do you think there could be a scenario where doing these reviews every month might produce even better results than doing it once a year? So ekdam with discipline, do the review every month and make changes every month iteratively instead of doing it after 12 months and then getting those changes done over the next 12 months.
See, from my perspective, the one thing that definitely saves on, and like I said, I try to do it every month, but I end up doing it once every 12 months. If I was doing it every month, it would save me much more time because it's easier to look at your expenses over a short period of time than looking at it 12 months period. So I'm talking again purely from an expenses perspective. If you're doing it regularly, that will save you time towards the year end. But making decisions, I don't know if that is like enough time for you to see something as significantly change. See, eventually, and this is obviously personal, Madhvesh does it more rigorously. He might have a slightly different opinion. But for me, I'm personally doing it to stay consistent, to keep, as close to my goals as possible. Because the thing that I have noticed over the last 8 years since I've been doing this is lifestyle inflation is real. जैसे जैसे salary बढ़ती जाती है, your expenses start going up as well. And you have to be realistic about it. It will happen. So if you pretend that I will keep living like I did 10 years ago with the same expenses, वो होता नहीं है. Whatever you might try. And so I make that into a realistic expectation for next year when I'll be planning my budgets for next year, where my travel expenses will go up. I know when I will travel next year, I'll travel with even more luxury, or I'll stay at an even better place than I did last year. I'll go to an even more expensive place than I did last year, or I might take more holidays than I did last year. Whatever that might be, there will be something in my travel budget that I will add. There will be something in any new expenses I expect. My rent might go up. I need to budget for that as well. These things kind of have definitely helped. But if I'm doing it on a monthly basis, it that will only help me balance the books somewhere. Like even for investments for that matter, when I'm looking at my investment review for the year, that doing it on a monthly basis doesn't really help because, I mean, if you're doing long-term investments, even a year might not be long enough. But it just helps you stay on track that you've invested in the right places, or if you made a profit or a loss in a certain investment, what made it a good investment versus a bad investment. You get to learn from it. That's how I see it.
Yeah, no, totally makes sense. Madhvesh, you had something to say.
Yeah, I actually agree completely with Ishan here. The monthly review that we do is very different from what we do yearly. This can even be equated to like how you run a company or even a business. Like monthly, you might take stock of like what you need to stock. But let's say you are selling, you are having a stationery shop, then you might want to see like how much inventory you have left in terms of notebooks, and you might source that the next month. But only at the year end, you will understand like, have I sold more pens or more notebooks? Does it make sense for me to like invest more in augmenting the capacity of pens or notebooks and stuff like that? So year end actually gives you the macro picture, and that's what allows you to like build wealth in a very sustainable manner. Whereas monthly, of course, helps you to like move the levers in a shorter way.
Some of the other things that are worth tracking, which basically is a side benefit of starting this process of annual reviews, is that over time you get better at it and you start tracking other more important things also. So, for example, in my annual review last year, I realized that my health insurance is like underinsured. So, in India, it was something around 5 lakhs, sum assured. And this was like a old insurance policy which I had taken and never really thought about it because I've been living outside of India for the last several years. So, never bothered to check. But then in tracking my expenses and in tracking my investments, one expense item was the premium that I paid for that insurance. And then that led me to just see, "Ki acha, let's see what is the latest on this insurance. Like, let's make sure that all the documentation is correct, etc." And then that triggered me to the thought that, okay, 5 lakhs is probably too less. And I want to invest some more money and get a better coverage and maybe do it with a different company than what I had in the past. So, for various reasons, that did not work out this year. But in 2024, I already know which company I'm going with, which plan I'm taking, what is the sum assured amount that I'm going to take. And I've already allocated the premium amount separately to make sure that that action item will be completed. Right. So, there are some of these things that happen once in a year only. Insurance premiums being a great example. Annual reviews will allow you to do some of these things. And then as you get more sophisticated, you can start tracking some other stuff also. Like one thing that you read about in financial blogs and all is you should have a will. I don't have a will. But as part of my year end review, this is something I've taken up as a sort of a financial resolution for myself in 2024 कि एक will बना के मेरे को proper एक अपना asset distribution वगैरह उसमें डाल के जाना है. So that is something that I might complete. I'm in India right now, so I might complete that action before going back. The other last piece that I also started tracking, and my tracking, by the way, started around COVID. So 2020 was the first time when I did like a proper tracking exercise. One thing that I started tracking, I think last year or before that, is I have a basic number in mind in terms of what is good enough for my financial independence. So, what is my progress towards that number? So, in terms of my net worth, let's say hypothetically, if my number is 10 CR, am I at 3 CR? Am I at 5 CR? Am I at 8 CR? What is the distance that I have covered? What is the distance that is remaining? And then the money that I have already accumulated, what part of it has come from investment returns versus what part of it is coming from salary? One amazing insight that I got is that compared to 2020, on a monthly or yearly basis, a big part of my net worth growth would come from my salary. Over the years, I am seeing that a larger portion of my net worth growth is coming from my investments and less from salary. So, this is something that you can obviously you need time to get to that stage, right? You need to make consistent investments, etc. So, I think tracking is not just tracking on its own, it just helps you connect the dots in the bigger picture and helps you see some trends and patterns of your own life emerging when you do this exercise diligently and as you keep adding more points and more areas of view to that tracking process. So I personally feel very empowered when I do this exercise. I feel like I know myself and my life a little bit better. And that's why I definitely recommend more people to do it.
Yeah, let me also touch upon as we start concluding the episode. So to answer the same question that three of you have answered, do I do the annual review? Don't do it. Though having said that, I do reviews every 4 to 6. They are just not as focused as the ones that you guys do, which, as you pointed out a few points, I think makes a lot of sense. And maybe I both. Two things that, as everyone was speaking, the two things that I thought might be good things to consider while doing these reviews is, and this is, I'm hoping for a slightly utopian situation in the future. A lot of the tracking would be automated. AI will do it for us. What we could, and in my opinion, at this point, we should focus on is the behavioral finance aspect. Something that Rohit alluded to on the impact of a total posture. Right? So when I say behavioral finance, I mean when I am sitting in December thinking about the investments I made, thinking about the income that I gain, how I save. A lot of the thinking should be around when I made certain decisions, were they the right decision? The job that I am in, is it getting me money that I want to get to my goal, as you mentioned, get to my financial independence goal? Is it allowing me to live my life happily throughout the year? So things like that, which are less numerical, more qualitative, more subjective, but that nuance will play a big factor in how you behave. And what I've also gathered from what three of you have said, and if I'm wrong, correct me, is a lot of this tracking is more related to the psychology of feeling secure in your financial position and less related to making more lucrative decisions. So the question that I asked Madhvesh, we kitne percentage se bada every year, is not necessarily the idea of these reviews. The idea of these reviews is you are feeling okay. Mentally you are feeling confident कि भाई अच्छा चल रहा है सब,
You're more,
मेरे को पता है, I am in control,
yes,
sort of a thing.
more in control of your life than anything else.
But I would
Right.
slightly disagree with
Yeah.
that as well. कि of course control तो आता ही है, जो ज़्यादा टाइम स्पेंड करते हैं खुद को लगता है कि ये ज़्यादा कंट्रोल करो. लुक्रेटिव डिसीजंस डेफिनेटली इससे आता ही. जैसे मैंने बोला कि जब मैंने चालू किया आई वाज लाइक putting money wherever the trend moves. और अभी now I know कि ठीक है suddenly bull market आ रहा है, but not necessarily I will take all my cash and put it. I know कि year mark किया इतना cash उसी पे डालूंगा, and that is the outcome of this overall process of year-end review alongside the meticulous tracking. And of course, ये सबका overall goal is to enhance your qualitative life. So that is the main source of the energy, or like whatever you might call it. कि वही end goal है कि उसको कैसे बेहतर करें या more fulfilled रहें. ये सब pathways to that. But in terms of tracking itself, it gives definitely a sense of control, but also helps you to improve your finances. जैसे रोहित ने बताया कि मेरा financial independence के लिए मैं कैसे track करता हूँ, सब पे भी it plays a big.
We'll conclude the episode. All for listening into this episode. We'll see you back again next week with a new episode.